Dobry den, welcome to Prague. Interesting thing about this place is that it's known now for being a bohemian centre for artists and creative types. But it has a long history of that. With King Rudolph II, though he was a Catholic himself, a very open-minded man, very interested in science, very interested in the occult arts, and particularly alchemy, which is the study of transmutation, taking things from a base metal and turning it into gold, which is a metaphor for the transmutation of that which is dense and materialistic matter into the realm of spirituality. So he encouraged people from all walks of life and all kinds of disciplines and backgrounds to be here, and he would sponsor them, he would fund them, he would encourage them to work. He himself was a very modern, forward-thinking man. He was a neophile. He was interested in novelty. He was interested in that which was new and that which was on the cutting edge, that broke boundaries. The term bohemian comes from here. So if we say that somebody is bohemian, it means that they are independent, artistic and creative, and they owe themselves to no particular ideology. So this is the original capital of bohemian, artistic, creative and independent thought that breaks boundaries and that really is for intellectual trailblazing. Interesting given the times that we're living in right now. King Rudolph II could be said in that sense to be the original hipster of an original bohemian hipster empire, in which he was encouraging free thinkers, scientists, philosophers and alchemists to come and to be free. There was no religious persecution here, because in other places, if you were practicing alchemy, you could be accused of witchcraft, which would end badly for you. A bit of torture and perhaps a bit of burning, plus all of your estate being seized by the church. So this was a safe place for people to come and to express these kinds of dissident ideas and to push those boundaries without fear of persecution or repercussion. I think we need that again. I think we need a space where we can push the boundaries and we can explore new ideas without fear of persecution, without fear of being called mean things, with being branded and potentially cancelled. You know, respectfully and without the intent to hurt anybody psychologically or emotionally or physically, goes without saying. But you need that. You have to have that freedom. You have to have the freedom to speak, because speaking and thinking are a psycho-cybernetic cycle and you can't really do one without the other. So if you're policing your thoughts, it's not good, it's not healthy, and it's really hard to come up with anything that's novel and to come up with anything that's new. So we need that again. The other thing he did was he summoned alchemists, he summoned the intellectual gypsies from around Europe and said, come here and explore, let's exchange ideas, let's create magical sigils and talk to angels and channel spirits through pieces of obsidian that we carry around in our pockets, and let's see what happens. And I think in that sense we should try for that again. Not a geographical space, but maybe an intellectual space in cyberspace where we can summon the alchemists. We can have the shamans, the weirdos, the outsiders, as Terence McKenna said of the shaman. It's somebody's role to be outside of everything and to channel pure chaos, pure potentiality and pure novelty. You can't live like that. Everybody can't be that. But a few people who are interested in doing that, who have that natural inclination, they can and they should. So we need a space for that. A space where we can have alchemists and street shamans come together and share ideas and push things forward. One of my biggest concerns is the sheer volume of data that we're subjected to at the moment. There's just so much information that we're bombarded with every day. And it's obviously, it's not it's not just neutral information, it's information with an angle. It always has an agenda. And the agenda is to agitate, to motivate, to push you to buy something, or to fill you with righteous indignation so that you spend more time on a particular website or a particular social media platform. So you're being hit with a ton of information, more than any other time in human history. That information is not pH neutral. That information has an agenda, and the purpose is to evoke emotion. So you take all of this information, all of this agenda-fueled data that's coming at you, and it invokes the urge to act and to respond emotionally. But simultaneously, embedded into this data stream is a second level of communication that says, there's nothing you can do about this. So, in a sense, using social media, using mainstream media now is almost like self-harm. There's actually a term now out there, it's been out there for a few years, called digital self-harm. And I think all their consumption of the information is now de facto digital self-harm, regardless of how you use it, because none of it is pH neutral. So, huge streams of aggravating information pouring in, a secondary level of communication that says there's nothing you can do about this. So here's the awful thing, and you're completely impotent to act. I think that this was embodied in the George Floyd case, where as an observer, wherever you are on the political spectrum, whatever your background is, as a human being, you're watching a terrible thing happen that every humane instinct inside of you is to stop it, but you can't. And you sit there and watch a terrible doom befall another human whilst there's nothing that you can do about it. It's incredibly frustrating. That's not all though. All of that is happening inside of a framework in which what you're allowed to say and what you're allowed to think and what you're allowed to feel is day by day, hour by hour shrinking into this new orthodoxy. So there's only a certain way that you are even allowed to process this huge amount of agitating information that you're impotent to do anything about, and what you're allowed to think and to feel about it. There is no longevity in this. We can't live like that. It's not sustainable. Psychologically, it's just going to create an enormous pressure cooker scenario that inevitably is going to lead to a kind of an explosion. We must do something about this, and it must be us. It has to be me, it has to be you. I know, as dumb as we are, as daft as we are, as like whatever level of education you're at, whatever your level of understanding is, we have to do something about it, because if we don't, who will? Nobody's coming to save us. It's down to us to do something about this. So I'm not the go riot in the street guy. I'm not the guy to organize a demonstration. I don't really think that these things challenge the power hierarchy anymore. In fact, you could probably present an argument, if you're a little bit cleverer than I am, that it reinforces the power hierarchy. They're ready for people to do that. They understand and have machines, a whole system in place for when people do that. And I don't really see it as a legitimate or sustainable form of rebellion. I think the more rebellious thing to do is to think. They don't want people thinking. They don't want the population to think critically or rationally. What they want is a kind of codependency between the population and the state, a codependency and a direct, literal dependency between the population and the state. So to me, the only avenue of rebellion I can see that would be real, authentic, and that could bring about real positive change. It's hard to do really positive change, you know. It's hard to do it at an individual level, at a human level, and it's really hard to do it en masse. It's really hard to do it as a collective. You can generate change. Change is inevitable, but positive change, real change, moving forward where we naively focus on a true evolution of consciousness, an upscaling of consciousness. I mean, my God, we need it. We're so dependent, we're so codependent on our governments, on our corporations, and we're so brainwashed, we're so marketed to. Our thinking, our feeling is really heavily indoctrinated. That's the nature of the ideological soup that we're swimming in today. And it's so deep that we can't distinguish between our thoughts and others' thoughts, our feelings and the feelings that we've had imposed upon us from top down. And that's the only game in town. Left and right is, it's over, it's done. The only thing that we should be concerned with is between the bottom and the top. It's authoritarianism versus liberty. And we could do with leaning towards liberty. Forget the left-right thing for the time being, really. How do we protect that? Focus on reclaiming our agency, reclaiming our individual sovereignty, becoming independent, not being so addicted to the things that we think we need that we don't. Don't be so focused on the material. Don't be stuck in 2D, in 3D, and the most crude elements of materialism to try and see beyond that. And we need to protect freedom of speech. We really do. We need to encourage and protect freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of feeling. And when we're doing that, we need to realize that protecting free speech really means protecting speech that you are not comfortable with, that I'm not comfortable with. If we're protecting free speech and we're only protecting the speech that we're comfortable with, that's not protecting freedom of speech. That's protecting a preference, a subjective preference that keeps us comfortable. Obviously, we don't want psychopaths occupying the space and saying horrible things, but we do need people to feel like they can voice an opinion that's different to ours without being vilified, pilloried, and denounced in a hysterical tone. We need to bring the tone down. We need to be calmer. We need to be more reasonable, and we need to be more open. Let's trust in our own intelligence, our own points of view, our own beliefs, and other people's points of view and beliefs, to the point where we're not engaging in this protective mode of being where we're like, well, if it goes outside the boundaries we really want people to think and to say, you've got to just turn them off. Let it be that they never get the capacity to speak again. No, let them speak. Let the person who opposes my point of view or comes from a different position, let them speak. I believe in myself. I'm confident. I'm robust. I'm resilient. I'm not thin-skinned. The way you see things is not the way I see things. I wonder if there's anything I can learn from you. I wonder if we can have a conversation. Maybe it would alter my perception. Maybe it would alter your perceptions. Maybe it's nice to speak to somebody who comes from an alternative point of view so that I'm not just living in an echo chamber. If all I have is people around me who are repeating and validating what I already think and feel, that would be pretty boring. And I don't think that that represents real thought. I don't think that's going to push me outside of my comfort zone. So when I say it's time to do something, I don't mean demonstrations and I don't mean riots. It's pointless. I mean, if you go out and fight with the police, who are you fighting with? You're fighting with working class men and women who have far more in common with you and I than the elite billionaire oligarchs who are running the show. So that's pointless. But what we can do is we can clean up our own acts individually, which is hard. I know it's hard. It's much easier to abrogate the personal responsibility to grow up and to be a human being, a legitimate, fully formed human being, by putting it all into an ideal or a collective or a political movement. But we tried that again and again and again. We've been trying it for centuries, either through religions or through political parties, and it's the same psychological function over and over again, and it fails in the same way in a cycle. Let's break that cycle. Let's bring it back to ourselves. Let's claim that individuality, that individual agency and sovereignty, and let's open up the space for some free speech and some free thought.